Sophie was never the kind of person who expected life to surprise her with secrets. She had grown up in a leafy suburb of Atlanta, Georgia, among the rhythmic hum of everyday routines, early morning coffee in her small kitchen, greeting her neighbors as she walked her dog Bruno, delivering supplies at the hospital where she worked as a pediatric nurse. Her world felt safe. As a single daughter, she had learned independence, then later married Mark, a charming marketing manager, and moved into a modest two-bedroom home in an older neighborhood just outside the city. They hosted weekend barbecues, walked hand in hand on Sunday evenings, and watched the kind of feel-good films that made them laugh and sigh with relief. At work, Sophie was dependable, gentle, engaged. Parents trusted her with their children. Her colleagues appreciated her calm under pressure. On her days off, she met friends for brunch, met book club groups, and volunteered one Saturday a month at the local animal rescue. She looked forward to the weekend's time with Mark, dinners with friends, maybe a drive into the countryside. Sophie's life was ordinary, in the best sense reliable, comforting, familiar. She liked that sense of constancy. When Mark proposed to her under the oak tree in her parents' yard, she said yes without hesitation. The wedding was small, the honeymoon simple. They promised each other honesty, commitment, support. She believed that promise. She believed in the home they created together, a place where trust lived. On weekday mornings, Sophie tied her hair back, kissed Mark goodbye as he drove off to the office, then walked Bruno through the quiet streets before the city fully awoke. Mark's commute became her cue to settle into her routine, checking her schedule, reviewing patient notes, catching up with friends. Life moved forward with a soft, steady beat. And yet, beneath that beat, something subtle began to shift. Maybe it was the way Mark started staying later at work, or how he laughed a little less at dinner, or how his phone beeped at odd hours and he closed it quickly when she entered the room. None of it set off alarm sirens, just little ripples. Sophie noticed that Bruno barked at strangers a little more on their walks. Sophie found herself checking the back windows of the house before bedtime. She dismissed it as stress, or maybe the husk of change from newly married life. She believed everything would settle. On her 35th birthday, Mark took her out to a rooftop restaurant overlooking the city lights. He raised his glass and toasted her. To Sophie, my partner, my future. The world was hers, her husband beside her, a steady job, good friends, and a comfortable home. As she looked at his face in the candlelight, she said to herself, yes, this is good. Yet in the same moment, the phone on their table chimed with a message. Mark glanced at it, his smile almost vanishing. He excused himself to go to the restroom. Sophie watched him walk away. She didn't yet know that the message would be the first real tremor beneath her calm life. It started with a weekend out of town. Mark said he had to attend a corporate retreat a couple of hours away. He kissed Sophie goodbye and left early Saturday morning. She stayed back in the cozy house, dusted the living room, baked a chocolate cake, and made plans to surprise him with his favorite dinner when he returned. Sunday afternoon came, and still no Mark. She tried his phone. It went to voicemail. She texted. No reply. Anxiety flickered in her chest. Bruno refused to eat. The lights in his car were dark in the driveway. She rang his work number. Voicemail again. Sophie sat on the sofa, the cake half finished in the kitchen, the quiet hovering heavy around her. Hours passed. The sun set. She closed the blinds, wrapped a shawl around her shoulders, checked her phone again. Then a knock at the door just after 9 p.m. Two police officers stood there, their faces serious and tired. Mrs. Barrow? One asked. She nodded, voice caught in her throat. I'm sorry to inform you. In the days that followed, Sophie tried to keep herself busy. She texted friends, canceled the animal rescue shift, even baked another loaf of bread to feel something familiar. But the silence from Mark persisted. A voicemail message from his work said he'd left for an off-site client meeting and would return Monday morning. Monday came and still no Mark. Bruno paced the house, sometimes standing at the window, ears perked. Sophie kept checking the living room clock, the driveway camera feed, her phone. She couldn't sleep. The police officers introduced themselves as Detective Serena Cole and Officer Jamal Hayes from the Atlanta Police Department. They sat at the kitchen table, notebooks open. Sophia described the situation. No note, no call, just absence. The officers asked calm questions. When was the last time you saw him? Did he mention anything unusual? Could you access his phone? Sophie answered. The last time was Saturday morning. He'd seemed normal. He didn't mention anything odd. She hadn't used his phone. They said they'd begin a missing person investigation. As the hours turned into days, Sophie began noticing small anomalies. The corporate retreat he'd been attending when she called the company. They said no record of him, but Mark's colleagues had seen him at work the Friday before. Strange transaction on their joint bank account. $450 to a car rental agency 2 hours drive away. The rental invoice. One day. Registration under a different name. Sophie's stomach twisted. She confronted Mark that evening when he finally called from a blocked number. His voice shaky. I'm fine. I'll be home soon. She asked where he was. He said, can't say. She asked why. He hung up. At the house, she found one of his shirts with a faint perfume scent she didn't recognize. A cafe receipt from a city 120 miles away. A hotel keycard in his wallet with a name that wasn't his. The investigation deepened. Detective Cole discovered that Mark's phone location had pinged at that hotel on Sunday evening despite him saying he was driving back home. Surveillance from the hotel showed a dark car leaving just after midnight. The driver's side identical to Mark's rental. Pieces were disjointed. Sophie sat in the dining room late one night, tears sliding silently, Bruno beside her, as the investigation slammed into gear. In parallel, Sophie's friends rallied. Her book club members brought dinners. Her weeks off were spent with Sister Emma, who flew in from London for support. The cheerful facade she'd worn began to peel away. She stopped laughing, started jumping at any phone ring, mistrusting shadows. Friends noticed. You're not yourself, Emma said softly. Sophie nodded but said, I just have to be strong. Each night she rewound the last time she'd seen him, replaying his smile, his kiss at breakfast. Everything suddenly looked different. Then the media got involved. A local newspaper ran a small front-page article. Marketing executive missing from suburban Atlanta residence. Reporters knocked on her door. Neighbors whispered. Sophie felt exposed. The safe rhythm of her life was gone. She lay awake remembering how she once believed in such a simple truth, that your spouse is your safe harbor. She reached for her phone and scrolled through old photos her and Mark at the lake, their dog Bruno in the snow, barbecues with friends. She wondered, how well did she know him? The question haunted her. Meanwhile, Detective Cole uncovered a second bank account in Mark's name, one she couldn't access. Wire transfers, hotel bookings, car hires, none explained. She requested a search warrant for the rental agency, reviewed hotel CCTV, and asked for phone records. The deeper the probe, the more uncomfortable details emerged. On a rainy Wednesday night, Sophie awoke to her doorbell at 2 a.m. She peered through the peephole. A man in a suit holding an envelope, no badge, no light. She didn't answer. When she looked again, he was gone. She called the desk. The police assured her they knew nothing. But her trust, once unshakable, now tremored. Through tear-blurred nights and endless phone calls, Sophie tried to hold on to hope. She remembered her promise to herself to remain calm for Bruno, for her job, for her friends. Yet inside, a storm gathered. She sensed the collapse of her life's foundation. The man she married, was he the man she thought he was? As the investigation advanced, the question twisted into something darker. What if he never was? The breakthrough came on a Thursday morning. Detective Cole called Sophie and asked her to meet at the precinct. Sophie arrived in her navy blazer, hands trembling slightly, Bruno in the car outside. "We found something," Cole said, sliding over a folder. Inside were photographs from the rental agency. Mark's photo entering the rental, a matching car plate. Hotel CCTV showing a man very like him leaving with a suitcase. Breakfast dinner receipts in odd cities. A GPS ping from the phone placed him in a small town 3 hours away, around the time he said he was driving home. Then there was the shock. A credit card under a different name, but linked to Mark's address. Used to book a one-way flight to Berlin 3 weeks earlier. Sophie felt the room spin. He did what?" she whispered. Cole nodded gently. "We believe he has been leading another life. A secret identity. That flight suggests he has connections overseas." The words sank deep. Sophie's mind raced back to the tiny red flag, the perfume on the shirt, the unknown cafe receipt, the hotel keycard. Each piece now slotted into a haunting puzzle. Meanwhile, in the background of the investigation, Mark's absence fed rumors. The local news station interviewed neighbors. "Very quiet home. They seem nice. We saw him late that Friday." But one woman said she once saw a woman at the house late evening when Sophie was away. They exchanged a hurried wave and left in a black car. Sophie remembered nothing. "I must have been asleep," she told the detective. But now she wondered, was she really asleep or just ignoring? Detective Cole and her team dug into financial records. Offshore bank transfers under shell companies. Hotel records showing an alias. Michael Bergman, registered at the Berlin flight departure. Rental cars in Germany. Reservations under Mem Barrow, west of Berlin. Phone data. Numerous SIM card swaps. Burner phones used for brief calls, then discarded. In the U.S., authorities put out an alert. This person may be crossing borders. Sophie, watching the press, felt her safe world unravel. At home, emotions exploded. Sophie confronted the house, ripping open closets, emptying drawers, searching for any trace of the other life. She found a small notebook in Mark's old briefcase, a list of dates, numbers, code words. A name, Laura Kay. She had no idea who. Her heart pounded. The dog whimpered beside her. That night she sat on the floor in the hallway, the notebook open on her lap, the ceiling light casting hard shadows. She cried. She raged. She wondered how she'd missed it. As days passed, the investigation stretched across continents. German authorities flagged the name Michael Bergman and a Berlin apartment lease in his name. Interpol and federal agencies were drawn in. Detective Cole informed Sophie, "We now believe Mark assumed this identity for years. He maintained a life here with you, and simultaneously another life abroad." Sophie bowed her head, grief mixing with anger and confusion. Yet the journey wasn't just external. Internally, Sophia struggled. She felt betrayed, unmoored, frightened. Every time her phone rang, she flinched. The house echoed with memories now tainted. She took long walks with Bruno in the early mornings, tears spilling, trying to breathe. Friends told her to leave the house. She insisted on staying. This was her home. A life with Mark, but the life she thought she led was slipping away. One evening, Detective Cole visited at dusk. "We have the Berlin apartment keys," she said. "We have a name for that woman you mentioned." She pulled out a photo, a blonde woman in her early 40s, looking at a camera portrait. On the back, Laura K. Berlin scribbled. Sophie's hand shook. The world she knew collapsed, and a new world of secrets opened. She whispered, "How many lies? How many lives?" As the pieces of the puzzle came together, Sophie realized that the person she married was living two totally distinct lives. From one side, he was the affable husband, the marketing manager who enjoyed their simple home dinner parties, the dog Bruno. From the other side, he was a phantom presence, another identity, another city, different dates, secret transfers, flights under aliases. She was living with a stranger in plain sight. Detective Cole laid out the timeline. Over the past 5 years, Mark had booked at least 14 separate one-way flights from U.S. airports to various European cities. Each return trip under a fake name. Rental cars in Germany, Austria, Czech Republic. Hotel stays under Michael Bergman or M. Barrow. During those times, he'd still been home on weekends, sometimes caught lying about work travel. Sophie found his calendar. Press event Berlin, client meeting Prague, car check Vienna, each marked as day trip, yet he was gone for days. His boss had no idea. At home, Sophie dissected photographs, Mark hugging her at a lakeside picnic. In another photo taken during the same weekend, a man resembling Mark stepping out of a car in Vienna. She held the phone over the prints, aligned their faces. The eyes were the same, the jawline unmistakable. She pressed her finger to the screen, her breath shallow. She took the photo to the detective, who nodded. Yes, that is him. Sophie stared at the image, shock and grief colliding. The home she believed in, the truth she trusted, fractured. The investigation escalated. German authorities raided an apartment in Berlin registered to Michael Bergman. Inside, they found a suitcase with Mark's initials, a laptop logged in with Barrow's email account, passports, one U.S. under Mark Barrow, one German under Michael Bergman. They detained the occupant, who claimed to be an associate, and said Mark had traveled frequently under aliases for corporate consulting jobs, never specifying for whom. They found Swiss bank accounts linked to shell companies, millions in transfers. According to sources, Mark had been establishing a European business network while maintaining his suburban life in Atlanta. Sophie watched this unfold on live video feeds, law enforcement from Berlin speaking. Each revelation cut deeper. Yes, the husband of 5 years was a ghost, a businessman, a traveler, a liar. She felt rage and sorrow. How many times had she asked him where he was? How many meals had they eaten while he was plotting elsewhere? She locked her phone, deleted hotel apps she didn't recognize, changed passwords, but the damage was done. Her world was no longer safe. In a rare moment of calm, Sophie walked into the room they had set up as the guest bedroom, now emptied. She sat on the edge of the bed, flipped through old letters, holiday postcards from friends, little notes they exchanged, the invite to book club. She rubbed the fabric and remembered the laughter in this room, the shared dreams. She closed her eyes and said, "We were happy." But in her mind she added, "We were safe," and realized both were illusions. Detective Cole visited again, with a file thicker than any Sophie had seen before. Photos, bank statements, rental receipts, phone records. "We're ready to make an arrest," Cole said. "But we need one thing more, a witness who can place Mark as Michael Bergman in Berlin. During last July, Sophie felt relief mingled with dread. The moment of reckoning was near. She had to testify. She had to confront the man she thought she knew. That night, she dreamt she was walking through a house she didn't recognize. The walls were white cold. Photographs hung askew. Bruno was barking in an empty room. She awoke gasping, found herself in her home nonetheless, but now the familiar looked foreign. The next morning, she wrote in her journal, "I married a man. I loved a stranger. I trusted a mask." She closed the journal, steeled herself, because tomorrow she would face reality. The walls began closing in. As the arrest warrant was prepared, Sophie's anxiety deepened. She found herself haunted by the question, who was the man she loved? The husband with the crisp suit, The weekend barbecues? The gentle good mornings? Or the phantom traveler under multiple names? The day Detective Cole phoned to say German authorities had detained a man in Berlin claiming to be an associate of Mark's. Sophie's relief was muted. In that moment, she realized relief and fear can coexist. She flew to Atlanta the next day, but the journey felt surreal. At home, she packed a small bag of documents Mark had never spoken of, a notebook, the creepy hotel card. Bruno sat silently in the back seat. The drive to the precinct felt like going to a funeral for the life she thought she had. Detective Cole greeted her with a sad smile. "We'll need your testimony," she began. "We'll need you to face the man you married." Sophie nodded slowly. "I'm ready." In the courtroom, Sophie sat close to Detective Cole. The gallery was quiet, cameras hidden behind one-way glass. The prosecution laid out evidence: flight logs, rental cars, bank transfers, alias passports. On the screen, a timeline mapped Mark's travels while still supposedly living with Sophie. Sophie looked at the man at the defense table. Mark. He looked back at her, eyes tired, face drawn. He was the same man and still not. His suit hung loose. He seemed smaller somehow. The gavel sounded. Case opened. Moments later, Sophie rose to give her statement. Her voice shook. She described her life before, the storms after. She described the nights waiting, the phone calls unanswered, the empty driveway, Bruno's confusion. As she spoke, the courtroom leaned in. Tears slid unbidden. She described finding the notebook. She told the jury, "I trusted him. I believed in our home. I believed in us." Her voice broke. The man she loved sat and stared. After her testimony, Detective Cole whispered to her, "You did it." "You stood up." Sophie closed her eyes, inhaled deeply. Relief poured in, but so did emptiness. The months ahead would be legal proceedings, appeals, media stories. Sophie left the courtroom and walked outside into the sunlight. A while later, she called her best friend in London. "It's over," she said quietly. "But it's not over." She paused. "I need to rebuild." That evening, she returned home, sat on the porch with Bruno, the sky a soft pink. She thought of what had happened, of the man and his lives. She thought of how she almost missed the signs, the perfume, the receipts, the hotel card. She realized she had to trust her instincts. She had to teach Bruno that despite the fear, they would walk forward. The next morning, she woke early, brewed a pot of tea, walked Bruno before the city stirred. For the first time in months, she felt the beat of her own life again. Quiet, small but hers. In the weeks that followed, the trial progressed. The man formerly known to them as Mark Barrows stood in court, charged with identity fraud, money laundering, and crossing international lines to avoid detection. Sophie sat in the witness stand again, eyes steady now though the memory stung. The jury heard how he maintained the facade of an ordinary suburban husband while organizing luxury stays in Europe, operating shell companies, and disappearing under a different identity. Faces in the gallery shifted. Friends from her book club appeared, neighbors watched. Sophie felt small but powerful. When the verdict came, it was guilty on several counts. The relief flooded her body, yet a part of her felt hollow. She hugged Detective Cole outside the court. "Thank you," she whispered. Cole smiled. "You did this." But as the legal chapter closed, a new chapter opened for Sophie, rebuilding her life. She sold the house, moved to a city closer to her sister in London temporarily, changed her contact details, but kept her job. She started a support group for spouses of white-collar criminals. She wanted other women to know the red flags matter. The whispers and odd receipts matter. At her support group meeting, one woman said, "I ignored the small lies. I let them build." Sophie replied, "I'm not going to let you. I want you to speak the whisper. Trust your gut." Reach out. She told the group about Bruno, how he sensed something before she did, how the dog became a compass pointing out danger. She told the story of the album of photographs she still keeps in a locked drawer so she remembers how things looked when the mask was on. Because remembering matters. Sophie returned to her nursing work slowly. The first day back on the ward after the verdict, she sank into her scrubs, walked into the children's ward, and greeted a small patient and mother with a soft smile. The routine felt sacred again. She realized that routine isn't weakness, it is the quiet roar of resilience. She walked Bruno every morning, often listening to a podcast about fraud and identity theft. She changed her locks, installed better security systems, and taught herself to ask, "Where are you really? What if what I see is only half?" In her journal now she writes, "I married a safe man. I found a hidden man. I lost both. I'm building a true." On the first anniversary of the verdict, she planted a rose bush in a sunny corner of her new garden. The rose has thorns. She doesn't expect the world to be entirely safe. She expects to be vigilant. She expects to walk forward. One dusky evening, Sophie sat on her new porch. Bruno beside her, a glass of iced tea in hand, soft breeze stirring. The sky turned amber and then deep blue. She thought of Mark wherever he was, whatever name he took. She didn't hate him anymore. She just accepted the truth, that the man she loved had lived a double life, and she would live a single one. In the quiet, she said to the dog, "We're okay now," and meant it. She had been broken. She was healing. She was free.